She cheated on me last night. I know because I saw it with my own eyes. The image of them together is burned into my mind like a wound that refuses to close. Every time I blink, I see them. Her body tangled with his, her lips whispering the lies I once believed were meant only for me. I should have walked away the moment I saw the second car in the driveway. A sleek black BMW, parked brazenly in my space as if it belonged there. The rain was coming down in sheets, my coat soaked through by the time I reached the front door. I hesitated before pushing it open, something inside me urging caution, whispering that I wasn't going to like what I found. But I was too blind, too trusting, too much in love with the woman waiting inside. The moment I stepped into the house, I knew. The air was thick with the scent of candles, a scent that was both familiar and foreign all at once. The living room lights were dimmed, the kind of setting we used for our anniversaries, our stolen moments of romance. But this wasn't for me. The soft murmur of voices floated down the hall, and then, laughter. Hers. It was the kind of laughter she hadn't given me in months, rich and full of warmth. My stomach clenched. My feet moved before I could stop them, carrying me toward the stairs, toward the betrayal waiting at the top. I reached the bedroom door, slightly ajar. A flickering candle cast shadows against the wall, their silhouettes moving together in an unmistakable rhythm. My pulse pounded in my ears as I pushed the door open, my body cold, my breath frozen in my throat. There she was, Elena, my wife, in our bed, with another man. For a moment, everything inside me went silent. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, that I was dreaming, that this was some twisted trick of the dim candlelight and the shadows dancing on the walls. But then she turned. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something worse than the act itself. I saw no guilt, no regret, just shock, then annoyance, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. Elena. My voice came out hoarse, strangled. She yanked the sheets up around herself, her body shifting away from him as if it could erase what I had already seen. The man beside her, a stranger with broad shoulders and expensive cologne, moved quickly, grabbing his clothes, his face twisted with surprise and something that looked like amusement. As if this was funny, as if I was a joke. Daniel, she started, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. She flinched. I took a step back, the reality of the moment crashing down around me. The air in the room was thick with betrayal, with the scent of him, of her, of something that had once been mine and was now tainted beyond repair. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to tear apart the life I had built with this woman and throw the pieces at her feet. But I didn't. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away. Because at that moment, I knew something she didn't. She thought she had broken me. She thought she had one. But she was about to learn just how wrong she was. And I was going to make sure she never forgot it. I didn't go back to the bedroom. I didn't yell or throw things. I didn't even give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I walked out. The rain had let up, but the streets were slick and empty, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the pavement. I got into my car and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Breathe, Daniel. The adrenaline coursing through me made my limbs tremble. My heart hammered, but my mind was eerily calm. Too calm. She cheated on me. 8 years of marriage, gone in an instant. The worst part? She hadn't even looked sorry. A sharp knock on my window startled me. I turned and saw him, the man from my bed, her lover. He stood there like he had every right to be here, his expensive coat slung over one shoulder, his dark hair slicked back. He was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, confident in a way that made my blood boil. I rolled down the window halfway, my fingers twitching against the door handle. "Hey, man," he said, a cocky smirk playing at his lips. "I think we should talk." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Was this guy insane? "What the hell makes you think I want to talk to you?" I said, my voice deceptively even. He shrugged, as if none of this mattered to him. "Look, I get it. This is messy. But Elena, she's been unhappy for a while, hasn't she?" I clenched my jaw. "That's what she told me anyway," he continued, as if he hadn't just ripped my world apart. That you've been distant. That things haven't been working for a long time. I wanted to punch him. Hard. But instead, I laughed. A low, humorless chuckle that made him hesitate, just for a second. Let me guess, I said, tilting my head. She told you she was planning to leave me? That she was just waiting for the right time? The way his jaw tightened told me everything. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch. Let me save you some trouble, I said. Elena doesn't leave people. She uses them until there's nothing left, and then she moves on. His smirk faltered. Good. Do you really think you're the first? I continued, watching his doubt flickered in his eyes. You think she hasn't done this before? The confidence he walked out here with was crumbling. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. You should run, pal, I said, before she does the same thing to you. I rolled up the window before he could answer and started the car. As I pulled away from the house I paid for, the one I had built a life in, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I didn't go far. I drove around aimlessly, the city lights blurring as I ran over everything in my head. Every late night she had brushed off as work, every sudden trip to see a friend, every moment she had pulled away without explanation. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I ended up at a bar, a quiet, dimly lit hole in the wall that smelled like old whiskey and regret. I took a seat in the corner, away from the crowd, and ordered a drink. I barely tasted it. My phone buzzed on the table. Elena. I let it ring. Then another text. Elena, Daniel, please come home. Let's talk. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Then, slowly, I set the phone down and signaled for another drink. Talk? What was there to talk about? I wanted answers, sure. But more than that, I wanted to understand why. Not just why she cheated, but why she thought she could get away with it. Why she had so little respect for me that she let another man into our bed and barely flinched when I caught her. Another text. Elena, I never meant to hurt you. I need to explain. Explain? There was nothing to explain. She had made a choice. And now it was my turn. I pulled up my banking app and stared at our joint account. I thought about all the times she had taken my card for shopping or self-care. I thought about the way she always justified every expense, always making it seem like I was the one being unreasonable when I asked questions. I wasn't angry. Anger was too simple. I was calculating. Before I could second-guess myself, I transferred half of the account's balance into my personal savings. She wouldn't notice right away, but when she did, she'd know I wasn't playing the fool anymore. A soft laugh pulled me from my thoughts. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see a woman sitting a few seats away, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. She was watching me. Dark hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of confidence that suggested she knew exactly what kind of night I was having. Rough evening? She asked, taking a slow sip of her drink. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. Something like that. She tilted her head. Want to talk about it? I looked at her, really looked. There was no judgment in her expression, no pity. And for the first time in hours, I smirked. Why not? Elena had spent months lying to me. Maybe it was time I started keeping a few secrets of my own. She introduced herself as Ivy. I didn't ask if that was her real name, and I didn't care. She had a presence about her, effortlessly confident, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and own it without saying a word. And for some reason, she was interested in me. You don't look like the type to drink alone, she mused, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. I smirked. And what type do I look like? She studied me, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against the rim of her glass. Married. Or at least, you were. I stiffened, and she caught it instantly. Ah, she said, setting her drink down. I see. Do you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Ivy shrugged, leaning in slightly. Men like you don't come to places like this unless they're avoiding something. Or someone. She wasn't wrong. I took a slow sip of my drink, considering my options. There was no reason to tell her anything. No reason to sit here entertaining a stranger while my marriage burned to the ground behind me. And yet, when I opened my mouth, the words came out before I could stop them. My wife cheated on me, I said flatly. Ivy didn't flinch. No gasp, no sympathetic, "I'm sorry." Just a slight tilt of her head, as if I had confirmed something she already suspected. "Tonight?" she asked. I nodded. She exhaled, shaking her head. "And yet, here you are. Calm. Not screaming. Not drunk off your ass. Would that have been better?" "No," she said simply. "But it tells me something about you." I leaned back in my chair. "And what's that?" A slow smile played at her lips. "You're not the kind of man who reacts. You're the kind who plans." I stared at her, letting the words settle. Because she was right. I wasn't the kind of man who flipped tables or made a scene. I wasn't going to beg Elena for answers or sit in the wreckage of what she destroyed. No, I was going to act. And Ivy? Something told me she might be just the kind of person who could help me do it. Ivy smirked, taking another slow sip of her drink. "So, what's your next move?" It was a simple question, but it lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. What was my next move? Before tonight, I had a wife. A life I thought was stable, predictable. Now, I had nothing but a broken marriage and a quiet, simmering rage. Ivy watched me, waiting. "I don't know yet," I admitted, my fingers tightening around my glass. "But I'm not going to let her walk away from this unscathed." "Good," Ivy said, tilting her head, "because from what I've seen, men like you, good men, are the ones who get walked all over the most. You give, until there's nothing left." She leaned in, her voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. "But now you're angry. And anger, when used right, is a weapon." A weapon. The word sent a thrill through me. Because she was right. I wasn't going to let Elena get away with this. Ivy tapped her glass against mine. "Tell me something, Daniel. What does she care about the most?" I exhaled, shaking my head. "Money, comfort, status." Ivy smiled knowingly. "And how much of that depends on you?" I already knew the answer. Everything. She had used me, our life, our home, our bank accounts, while sneaking around behind my back. She had built a fantasy on my dime, and I had been too blind to see it. But not anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app again, my thumb hovering over the screen. "What are you doing?" Ivy asked, amused. "Cutting off the oxygen," I muttered. She leaned closer, watching with interest as I moved every remaining dollar from our joint account into my personal savings. With one click, Elena's safety net disappeared. Ivy let out a low whistle. "That's a start." She wasn't wrong, but it wasn't enough. I wasn't just going to take her money. I was going to take her control. And by the time I was done, Elena would have nothing left. Elena called again. I stared at the screen as her name flashed across it, my finger hovering over the decline button. She was probably pacing our bedroom, my bedroom, frustrated that I wasn't answering, fuming that I hadn't come crawling back to talk. Maybe she was panicking, realizing something was off. Good. I let it ring until it stopped. Then, a text. "Elena, Daniel, please. We need to talk." No, we didn't. I took another sip of my drink, my mind already moving ahead. Money was only the first step. She wanted comfort? I'd take it. She wanted security? I'd rip it away. She wanted to live a double life? Then I'd make sure she had nothing left when the truth came out. "You're thinking too small," Ivy said suddenly, watching me from across the table. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" She leaned in, resting her chin on her hand. "You're cutting off her money. Smart. But it's temporary. She'll find another way. Another fool to leech off." Ivy wasn't wrong. Elena wouldn't sit still and suffer. She'd scramble. She'd manipulate. She'd look for another way out. Ivy tapped her nails against her glass. "If you want to really make her feel what you're feeling, you need to hit her where it really hurts." "And where's that?" She smirked. "Her reputation." I considered that. Elena had always cared about appearances. To friends, to family, to the outside world. She was the perfect wife. The sophisticated woman with a stable husband, a beautiful home, a future carved in stone. If that image shattered, she wouldn't just lose her lifestyle. She'd lose everything. My mind raced through the possibilities. Who knew about her affair? How long had it really been going on? Had there been others before this? I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. And I knew exactly how to get it. I stood up, sliding a few bills onto the table. I have something to take care of. Ivy's lips curled into a knowing smile. Good. I hesitated. Why are you helping me? She shrugged. Maybe I like watching karma in action. Maybe. Or maybe Ivy knew something about betrayal too. Either way, I wasn't going to waste time questioning it, because I had a wife to ruin. By the time I reached my house, no, our house, though it wouldn't be for much longer, the storm had passed, leaving behind slick streets and the faint scent of rain. I sat in the driveway for a moment, watching the dim glow of the bedroom window. She was still up, waiting. Good. I stepped out of the car, my pulse steady, my anger sharpened into something cold and precise. The second car, the black BMW, was gone. I wasn't surprised. He had made his exit while he still could, leaving Elena to pick up the mess. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. She was in the living room, curled up on the couch, looking like the perfect picture of regret. A glass of wine sat untouched on the table beside her. She must have heard the door, because she looked up immediately, her eyes wide, face tear-streaked. Daniel, she breathed, as if my name itself was salvation. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, watching her. I said nothing. She hesitated, wringing her hands, searching for the right words. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I said evenly. Her lips parted, thrown off by my calmness. She had expected a fight, yelling, rage, maybe even pleading, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. She sat up straighter. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. That's funny. Because you did. She flinched. It wasn't, Daniel, it wasn't serious. It was a mistake. I stepped forward slowly, my gaze never leaving hers. Which part? I asked. The months of sneaking around? The money you took from our account to fund your affair? The fact that you brought him into our bed? Her face paled. Yes, I knew. She swallowed, looking down at her lap. I didn't. Don't lie. I cut in. Not now. Not when I know everything. Her breathing quickened. I saw it then. That flicker of panic. Of realization. I wasn't just here to be sad. I was here to end her. You don't understand, she started. No, Elena. You don't understand. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. A folder opened, revealing every single piece of proof I had collected. Screenshots of messages, bank statements, hotel receipts, photos. Her gaze flickered over them, her face draining of color with each passing second. When were you going to tell me? I asked, voice low. Silence. When you drained me dry. When he was done with you? I tilted my head. Or were you planning on keeping both of us? Her lower lip trembled. Don't, I said coldly. You had your chance to be honest. Now it's my turn. I turned the phone toward her, showing her the last file. The email I had prepared, addressed to her family, her friends, her colleagues. She gasped. Daniel, please, she whispered. But I was already hitting send. She lunged for me, but I stepped back, watching as her perfect little world collapsed in real time. You took everything from me, I said quietly. Now it's your turn. Her phone buzzed. And just like that, Elena's mask shattered. Elena's phone vibrated violently on the table, the screen lighting up with incoming messages. One after another, her carefully crafted life crumbled before her eyes. I watched as she fumbled for it, her hands shaking as she swiped across the screen. Her eyes darted over the words flashing before her, and her face twisted in horror. Mom, Elena, what the hell is this? Tell me it's not true. Jessica, her best friend, are you serious? Daniel sent me everything. Oh my God, Elena. Boss, Mr. Calloway, we need to talk. First thing tomorrow morning. Don't be late. And then, the worst one. Her lover, Jason. I can't deal with this. This is too much drama. Lose my number. She let out a strangled noise, something between a sob and a gasp. She read the last message twice, her grip tightening on the phone like she could will the words to disappear. Daniel, she whispered, her voice raw, broken. What did you do? I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her drown in her own destruction. I let everyone see the real you, I said calmly. You should be thanking me. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, panic clawing at her throat. You ruined me, she choked out. I let out a low chuckle. No, Elena. You ruined you. I just made sure everyone saw it. She looked up at me, desperation in her eyes now, searching for something. An ounce of regret, a sliver of the love we once shared. But there was nothing left. The woman I had once adored, the woman I had built a life with, was a stranger to me now. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, she didn't look. Instead, she let it fall from her hands onto the hardwood floor with a hollow thud. Her shoulders shook. She covered her face with trembling fingers, her breath coming in short gasps. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can? I laughed, shaking my head. A mistake? I repeated. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is leaving the stove on. You didn't make a mistake, Elena. You made choices. Over and over again. She dropped her hands, her eyes wide, desperate. I still love you, Daniel, she pleaded. I was lost, but I never stopped loving you. I stared at her for a long moment, then exhaled. You don't destroy someone you love, I said. Her face crumpled. I picked up my car keys and turned toward the door. Where are you going? She asked frantically, scrambling to her feet. To celebrate, I said smoothly. Celebrate? She cried. Daniel, please. We can work through this. I need you. I glanced over my shoulder, my lips curling into a smirk. No, Elena, you need me, but I don't need you. And with that, I walked out. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. My mind was too sharp, too clear. I had done what I came to do. Elena was drowning in the wreckage of her own deceit, and I had no intention of throwing her a lifeline. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Not Elena this time. Ivy. Ivy. So, did you do it? I smirked, leaning against the hood of my car before typing back. Me? Oh, I did more than that. 3 dots appeared. A pause. Ivy, tell me everything. I hesitated for a moment, then slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. I had no destination in mind, just the need to keep moving, to feel the rush of momentum. Elena was over. That part of my life was dead. But what came next? My phone buzzed again. Ivy, you still at that bar? I thought about it. Me? No. Just driving. Ivy, meet me somewhere. I raised an eyebrow. This woman had walked into my life just hours ago. Yet somehow, she understood this storm inside me better than anyone. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. Either way, I wasn't in the mood to be alone. Me, name a place. 10 minutes later, I pulled into a small late-night cafe on the edge of downtown. Through the window, I spotted Ivy sitting in a booth, stirring a cup of coffee like she had all the time in the world. I slid into the seat across from her. She looked up, her dark eyes sharp with amusement. Well, she asked. I leaned back, smirking. She's in hell. Ivy grinned. Good. She took a sip of her coffee, watching me over the rim. So, how do you feel? I thought about that for a moment. Not broken. Not angry. Not even empty. Lighter, I admitted. Freer. She nodded approvingly. That's how it should be. A comfortable silence settled between us. Then she tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. So, Daniel, what's next? I hadn't thought that far ahead. My entire focus had been on dismantling Elena's lies, on taking back control. But now, sitting across from this woman who had helped me see things clearly, the future didn't feel like a blank space anymore. It felt like an open road. I smirked. Guess I'll have to find out. Ivy smiled at my answer, tapping her nails against the ceramic mug in front of her. Good, she said. That means you're thinking beyond her now. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my seat. Yeah, for the first time in a long time, I'm not just reacting. I'm moving forward. She nodded, satisfied. And where does forward take you? I chuckled. You ask a lot of questions. I like answers, she shot back with a smirk, especially from men who just burned their old life to the ground. I studied her, realizing that she wasn't just being curious. She was testing me, seeing if I was still tethered to my past, if I'd break at the thought of what I'd lost. But I wasn't breaking. Elena's betrayal had freed me. And Ivy? She was a storm of her own. I don't know where I'm going next, I admitted. But I do know one thing, Elena's not a part of it. Ivy tilted her head. And if she tries to be? I smirked. Then she'll regret it. Something in Ivy's eyes flickered, approval, maybe even a hint of admiration. She lifted her coffee and took a slow sip, as if letting my words settle in the space between us. You ever get tired of just talking about her? She asked suddenly. I blinked. What? You spent years letting Elena take up space in your head, she said, setting her mug down. Maybe it's time you put your focus on someone else. The challenge in her tone was unmistakable. I wasn't naive. I knew this woman wasn't just offering casual advice. She was offering something else entirely. And maybe, for the first time in years, I was ready to take it. I leaned forward slightly, matching her gaze. What exactly are you suggesting, Ivy? She smirked. I think you already know. The tension crackled between us, undeniable, electric. Elena had destroyed me, but that didn't mean I couldn't rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, Ivy was the perfect place to start. The space between us felt charged, like a lit match hovering over gasoline. Ivy held my gaze, unflinching, waiting for me to make a move. 4 years, I had been the predictable husband, the steady, responsible man who always did what was expected of him. I had built a life around trust and loyalty, only to watch it burn at Elena's hands. Now, I was done being predictable. I smirked, leaning in just enough to make Ivy tilt her head, intrigued. And what if I decide to take your advice? She arched an eyebrow. Then you'd finally be making a smart decision. I laughed, shaking my head. You're trouble, aren't you? She sipped her coffee slowly, never breaking eye contact. Only for the men who deserve it. I had met her less than 24 hours ago, yet somehow, Ivy understood me better than the woman I had spent years building a life with. She saw past the pain, the betrayal, the wreckage, and instead of pitying me, she pushed me forward. I liked that. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the moment. I didn't have to check the screen to know who it was. Elena. Ivy glanced down at it, then back at me. Still holding on? I picked up the phone, staring at her name. The last time I had seen her, she had been unraveling before my eyes, her carefully crafted world collapsing under the weight of my revenge. She was calling because she thought she still had a chance, because she didn't believe that I had truly let go. But I had. I slid my finger over the screen and hit block. Then, I turned my full attention back to Ivy. She smiled approvingly. Now that is a smart decision. I exhaled, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. Freedom. Let's get out of here, I said. Ivy's smirk widened. I thought you'd never ask. I threw a few bills on the table and stood, feeling lighter than I had in years. Elena was my past. But Ivy? Maybe she was the start of something new. The night air was crisp as we stepped out of the cafe, the world around us quiet except for the distant hum of the city. Ivy walked beside me, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. I hadn't planned for any of this. Not the betrayal, not the revenge, and certainly not meeting her. But maybe that was the point. Life didn't follow a script. It shattered, twisted, and then forced you to rebuild from the wreckage. And I was ready to rebuild. Where to? Ivy asked, looking up at me, her dark eyes gleaming with curiosity. I smirked. Anywhere but back. She grinned. Now that's an answer I can work with. We walked to my car, and just as I reached for the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new number. But the message was from Elena. Elena, Daniel, please. Just talk to me. I made a mistake. I love you. Ivy caught the flicker of hesitation on my face. Her? I nodded, turning the phone so she could see the message. She sighed, shaking her head. She still thinks she has control over you. Not anymore. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my final response. Me, you taught me what love isn't. That's all I'll ever thank you for. Then, without another thought, I blocked the number. Ivy smiled. That was poetic. I chuckled, opening the car door. Come on, let's get out of here. As I pulled onto the road, I felt the weight of my past slipping away, disappearing in the rearview mirror. Elena had thought she had broken me. She thought I would crumble, beg, chase after her. Instead, she had given me the greatest gift of all, freedom. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. I was finally moving forward. And I couldn't wait to see where the road would take me next. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.